I told you guys, I think Major League Baseball's got a really interesting buzz around it right now for a sport that a lot of us have stopped paying attention to over the last few years. I'm very interested right now in what's going on. And our pal, of course, everybody knows Jesse Agler, one of the voices of the San Diego Padres. Love having you on ZASLOW Show 2.0 for the first time. How you doing? You all right? You're out there in Arizona, Cactus League style?
Yeah, man, spring training time. It's good to see you, Zaz. It's good to talk to you. It's a lot of fun out here. Obviously, it's very easy to be a Padre fan right now,
Yeah.
which was not really the case for most of the first 50 whatever years in the history of this franchise. It's really unbelievable.
So would you agree with me that there's a different kind of buzz surrounding Major League Baseball right now, right? I mean, today's the first day of March, and we're still several weeks away from the regular season getting going, and I feel people are talking about what's going on.
Yeah, I think, Major League Baseball has learned a lesson in the last couple of years that the NFL learned a long time ago. And that is people not only talking about your sport, but arguing about your sport is very good for business. I think MLB was kind of afraid of its own shadow for a long time. I think they operated in a way in which, they were so concerned about offending what they thought was their core fan base, this older fan base that didn't want change, didn't want anything different than the way they thought it had been for the last 50 years. And I think they finally realized, hey, those people aren't going anywhere. We're not going to offend them to the point that they're not going to come back, but we do have an opportunity to bring some more people into the fold, which of course is the point of the whole thing. And so the pitch clock, I think, is the big example of all of that. But the conversation around the pitch clock, as much as the pitch clock itself, I think are really helping to drive interest right now.
Okay, so for folks who aren't 100% aware yet of what's going on, we got a 20-second pitch clock, at which the pitcher needs to obviously deliver the pitch before the end of the clock, and the batter needs to be, and we learned this lesson a few days ago, the batter needs to be looking at the pitcher by 8 seconds. Am I right about this?
You got it mostly right. So with nobody on base, it's only 15 seconds. And then with guys on base, it's 20 seconds. And then, the batter has to be alert is the word they're using to the pitcher with 8 seconds on it. We have had, I think, 5 games out here at this point right now. Only 2 of them have gone over 3 hours, and they both should have gone over 3 hours. They were long offensive games, but games that probably would have taken close to 4 hours a year ago. We've already basically averaged, I think, 2.5 hours the other 3 games. I mean, this is a massive, massive change. But it's not just that the game is shorter. It's that what they've taken out is all the dead time. You're not losing any baseball. You're not losing it. You're actually gaining some more action, it seems, early on. It does seem like there are more balls in play. We'll see if that continues. But, you're just cutting out all this dead time. That pitcher who doesn't want to throw, who's walking around the mound, who's shaking off the catcher 1,000 times. You can't do that anymore. It's get it and go. And it kind of looks like baseball looked when you and I were growing up. I mean, if they average 230 something, you're going to have to go back to the 70s for the last time that baseball was played at that pace.
Now it's only spring training and it's only been a week now. Is there any reason to believe that the games aren't going to be, I think I saw 3 hours, 9 minutes was the average time last year. And after the first few days of spring training this year, it was something like 2 hours, 33 minutes. Is there any reason to believe that that's not going to stick?
I don't know that it'll be that extreme in the regular season, but I have no question in my mind they're going to cut off at least 10 or 15 minutes. And again, I think getting even hung up on the time of game isn't necessarily the way to do it. It's more the way the game looks and the pace and the action, all that kind of stuff. I think people would be generally fine with 245 if it was like an engaging 245. The problem was last year, we play games that were 3-2 games that would take 3.5 hours. There's not enough happening in a 3-2 game for it to take that long. Those are the ones that, to me, as a broadcaster and a fan, really need to be addressed. So I think they've done that and maybe more. Right, look, if it does end up being an average of 240 or something like that, that is a huge change. And look, you got kids. I got kids. If you're trying to, go down to Marlins Park, right, from Broward or something, or from Palm Beach County, you're talking about maybe an hour in the car to get down there. If you were talking about a 3.5-hour game and then 45 minutes to get home afterwards, there's no way you're staying the whole time. There's no way. And now you have an opportunity to actually be there in the 9th inning and see the game kind of come to a conclusion.
I mean, Marlins home games start at 6:40. So you're telling me if there's a chance that game can be over and done with at 9:20, that would be
9 o'clock.
That'd be amazing. That'd be amazing. Now, what's going to be the big, or what has been maybe so far the biggest adjustment for you? Have you like it's moving faster now and there's
Yeah,
a clock. So like, have you gotten confused? What's been the big adjustment?
So I think the first game, maybe we were in our heads about it. Like we knew it was going to be really different. And so I work with Tony Gwynn Jr. He's my partner and my analyst on Padres radio most of the time. And we were both like, we were kind of frantic. It was like, oh man, this is a huge adjustment. And that game was super, super quick. But it was, I think, more in our own heads than it was like the reality of the situation. The other games that we've done since then have felt normal. It just feels like that's the word. It feels normal. It just feels like a normal baseball game, as opposed to one of these games where you're trying to drag out everything you're saying because you're just trying to fill time on the air and kind of, fill in the gaps of the nothingness. Like most of that is gone now. Like in the last couple of days, I think we still have plenty of time to have the conversations that we want to have. Granted, that's easier during spring training because the action is kind of secondary, but like it's just felt like good normal baseball. I can't tell you how impactful it's been and how enjoyable it's been.
Now, we saw a few days ago, there was a game where the game ended in a tie at spring training, but it ended on a called strike 3 because the batter was not looking at the pitcher. I have a hard time believing we're ever going to see that in the regular season because I think the batters are going to be aware. Like, we got a full month of spring training to get used to this. But, like, can you see that happening one day where a game actually ends on the umpire handing a ball, maybe it's bases loaded, or a strike 3?
It can happen. Major League Baseball, one of the things they've been very clear about is that there is going to be no wiggle room on these rules. So if some guy is not ready, it's going to happen. Now,
and is it an automatic ejection like when the manager arguing a ball and strike?
Yeah. So you can't argue about it. It's not reviewable. The pitch timer stuff's not reviewable. I think this is the only way you're going to make it work is if you're strict about it. So look, if that pitcher isn't ready, if that hitter isn't ready, that's on them. That's not on the rules. That's not on MLB. That's on that guy for not being aware of the moment. Now, look, obviously if it happens in the 4th inning with 2 outs and nobody on base, it's an automatic ball, much less big of a deal. But you're right. Like if there's some closer, and closers, a lot of them very slow, by the way, generally, so they're going to have to adjust. So early on in the season, if Kenley Jansen, Braves, is up there and he kind of loses track of it and something happens, I mean, yeah, it could happen. I would think the odds of it aren't great just because I do think guys are going to be hyper aware, especially in late inning situations. But if it slips some guy's mind or whatever, like it could definitely happen. And people are going to be up in arms if it does. I know that. But like things happen like that in sports all the time. There's a free throw to win a game after a dicey foul call in hoops, right? There's a penalty in football, untimed down. Now all of a sudden you get this free play. Like stuff happens in sports because of rules. Baseball has kind of been away from that for so long, and now it almost feels like they're joining, the rest of the sports world.
How about with the shift? Are we going to get more balls in play, more singles through the infield?
So far, yes. I mean, in spring training, like there's no question in my mind. I'll tell you what, too, is like a really like big baseball fan. There's something so satisfying to me all of a sudden of like just like a normal ground ball up the middle that goes.
I want guys running the bases. I want them going first and third.
No, you have it exactly right. And that's what MLB has been talking about all along. They said, we want more doubles, we want more triples, we want more stolen bases. And they didn't say that because they just wanted it. They said it because they did all these focus groups, they did all these surveys. And it's not rocket science, but that's this kind of stuff that fans want to see. The walks and the strikeouts, that doesn't do it for most people. And so, yes, they want more balls in play. They want more balls that are in play getting through. The other thing is, not just the hits. Now, all of a sudden, you're rewarding athleticism defensively. Your second baseman isn't just going to be standing at the exact right spot because he's got 2 other infielders right next to him. He's going to actually have to range, dive, make a play a little bit more often. We've seen more of that in the last few days at spring training. Those things are fun. Those things are exciting. Those are the kinds of things that make you lean forward when you're watching the game and be invested in the moment. Baseball had lost a lot of that.
Now, how about the pickoffs? This is so interesting to me. So you could only throw twice to first base to pick off a guy. What happens after he doesn't get him the second time? Is the runner just hanging out in between first and second base and no one can try and pick him off?
Well, you can throw over a third time, but if you don't get the guy out, it's a balk. So that discourages, theoretically, the 45-foot lead because, all right, let's throw over and try and get him in a rundown. It's worth the risk. Well, what I've noticed early on, 2 things in these spring training games, and teams are probably not fully showing their hands yet in terms of how they want to strategize this, but 2 things I'm noticing. One, you're going to see catchers backpicking a lot more than we've seen the last few years.
There's no limit to that? They could do that?
Correct. Okay. Correct. So that doesn't count. So you're going to see the good catchers, at least, throwing down to first, to second, and to third to at least keep guys honest. The other thing is we're not really seeing pitchers using that second step off or that second throw over. They're doing the one maybe during the course of a plate appearance, and it resets, by the way, every plate appearance, but they're not really getting to that second one, so they kind of have it in their back pocket. Now, if you got like a Trey Turner, an elite base stealer on first, and you kind of feel like this is a situation where he might go, obviously the calculus changes a little bit there strategy-wise, but so far in spring training, I think only once in like the 4 games I've broadcast have I actually seen a pitcher use both disengagements, they're calling them, to check on a runner.
Is all of this, I love it all, is all of this too much at once?
No, I don't think so. I mean, because it all connects is the other thing. Sometimes tangentially, sometimes directly. And again, I think what I said at the beginning about MLB for so many years being afraid of upsetting the traditionalists, I think it's easier to sort of rip the Band-Aid off. Like, all right, if we're going to make some big game-changing decisions here in terms of the rules, let's not trickle them in. Let's not do the bigger bases this year and the shift restrictions next year and the other thing the year after that. I'll tell you what, if they thought the technology was ready, they would do automatic balls and strikes, robot umps this year. I think they just feel like they're probably a year away from tweaking it enough to get it done, but that's coming too. Like, make no mistake. That'll be here, if not next year, probably the year after. Technology only moves in one direction. It doesn't get dumber. And they're going to have that figured out, as close as they can to what they want it to look like. So, yeah, I don't think there's too much of it. I just have a really, really hard time right now taking anybody seriously who's mad about this. Like, what are you looking for? You want more time of the guy stepping out of the box and tapping his bat on the ground and fixing his batting gloves. Like, that's not compelling television. That's not compelling when you're at the game. And it's not compelling radio, certainly when you're describing what's happening. So right now you're just getting less of the nothing and more of the something.
That's a good way of putting it. Is there any reason that people are not happy, or players maybe are not happy with the bases being bigger? What's the drawback of bases being bigger?
No, there's no drawback. The players really like that one. For one, a safety thing. Those bang plays at first base, man. If you got one guy as a size 12 and one guy as a size 14, that's not a lot of space on those bases. And
have they considered the extra bag like in softball for first base?
It's funny because I used to bring that up all the time. Because the weird thing, not to get too like technical baseball stuff, but like you got to be in that runner's lane, right? But then the runner's lane is in foul territory, but the bag's in fair territory. So I used to always say, put the stupid softball base in foul ground for the runner to hit. This kind of gets you that direction, I guess, without the double bag. But yeah, no, it'll give them a little bit more space there. It also does cut down the distance between the bases a little bit. So maybe you get a couple extra stolen bases in there, that kind of thing. Maybe you get a little bit more aggressiveness on the bases, that kind of thing. But that was the one rule change that the Players Association at the start was like, yeah, we're all in on that. We like that. And the other thing to remember too is all of this stuff has been experimented with endlessly in the minor leagues the last couple of years. So many of the players are already familiar with this kind of stuff. Obviously you got your veterans who haven't played minor league baseball in a long time. It's new to them, but that's not the majority of players in MLB. So a lot of guys are very, very comfortable with all this stuff already. I
like it. Look, it's March 1 and I'm super intrigued by what's going on with Major League Baseball. I'm very into it. And for someone who's been down on the Marlins, obviously, the last couple of years, because, new owner is the same as the old owner, I'll be more interested in watching these games if they're moving quicker and there's more action going on. I don't see any drawback.
I mean, look, man, the thing that baseball has always had going for it is, middle of the summer, nothing else happening. Yeah. And, that game comes on at 6:40 or you're in your car, rush hour. It's a joy. It really is. It's a wonderful, wonderful sport. It just got a little bit too far, I think, away from like mainstream ability to be locked into it. And again, people like me who've loved this game dearly for their entire lives, I was already watching, but I do think you're going to make it a lot easier for families in particular, for younger kids in particular, to be interested in this game. It's a wonderful sport. Like, everybody loves baseball when they're little, right? Like, yeah. And some people kind of grow out of that, I think, or did grow out of it because MLB became a difficult product, I think, to watch at times. Obviously, the market-to-market stuff with the Marlins, that's another issue. But I still think there's something nice about August 2nd. And, you're like, hey, what else am I going to do? Like, flip on the game. And I think more people will do that now.
I think people would be shocked, people who are maybe even a little bit older than us, that, you go put on a game from back in the 80s, maybe even the 90s, and the pace was this, but without the clock.
Exactly. And that's the thing. This is a restoration. That's all this is. This is a restoration to better days gone by.
Yeah. Jesse, excellent job. Real quick, are you pumped about Canes basketball? You're a UM alum. Are you keeping track?
I am keeping track of basketball. It's funny. One of the guys who works here is a big NC State guy. So we were just talking ACC hoops out here in Phoenix on March 1st. Last year that run to the Elite Eight was really exciting. What I like, because like I still think of it as a football school, despite the lack of football.
It's a basketball school.
But they're just watchable. The basketball team, like they're fun to watch. He's such a wonderful coach. They got cool talent. They just seem to have that program humming right now, which is really a lot of fun. And like my bar for Canes hoops is pretty low, and they're like so far above it. It's so enjoyable to keep track of it. And I love what's going on with that.
Great job, Jesse. Good catching up with you, man. We'll do it again when the Padres are in town. I appreciate it.
You as well. Anytime, Zaz. Great to see you.